Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Wednesday. I hope the week is going well wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. Feels a bit weird, doesn't it, now? After 10 months of football, of the Premier League, suddenly we're facing up to a weekend with no Premier League, facing up to a couple of months with no Premier League. In a way, I suppose, after the way this season has just finished and the disappointment we've all endured of missing out on the title by the smallest of margin, that might be quite nice, but I don't know. It always lasts about a week, doesn't it? And then you just dream of it coming back very, very quickly. You do have some football to look forward to over the next couple of weeks or so. Of course, Europa League final coming up. Then we've got the Champions League final and the Euros as well. So plenty to keep us entertained. But as always, during the summer, there's still plenty to talk about when it comes to club matters and Arsenal matters. So there's lots to talk about today. Thought we'd start by looking at the potential summer sales, which is going to be an interesting source of debate throughout the summer for Arsenal. Certainly some players going to be moved on. How much money can the club bring in? Can they finally generate some decent transfer fees for some players? So we'll talk about that. We'll look at some of the players who could well go. We'll discuss Oleksandr Zinchenko, who may well fall into that category of a player who could potentially go as well. Got to talk about Chelsea. Remarkable news coming out of that club as usual. With Mauricio Pochettino leaving. Got some plenty of questions and comments from you guys as well. So let's get started. And I thought we'd start with the potential summer sales. Now, what you're seeing in front of you on the screen here, obviously, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on podcast, then this doesn't help you. But I've got the squad list for the current Arsenal squad list, first team squad anyway. And it looks like a strong squad, but then in that list still, until the end of their contracts, you've got Cedric Suarez there, you've got Mohamed Elneny there. We know that both of those players have already announced that they will be leaving come the end of their contracts in about 6 weeks' time, so you can scrap them from the list. But who else is going to go this summer? This is going to be a really big and important part of the summer for Arsenal. Obviously, a lot of the focus is always on who comes in, what players they're going to sign, which is understandable. But selling players is a really key part of any club's transfer business. It's an area that we know that Arsenal have struggled in for quite some time now. But this summer could potentially represent a decent opportunity for them to make some sales and to bring in, for the first time in a while, some pretty significant cash. Now, the names that immediately spring out here when you're looking at it is Aaron Ramsdale, Eddie Nketiah, Reece Nelson, Emil Smith-Rowe. Now, of course, all English players, all homegrown players, that could add to their value when it comes to selling. You all know my thoughts on some of these anyway. Certainly Emil Smith-Rowe, I'd much rather he just stayed and got given the opportunities that I think he deserves at this football club. But it's pretty clear from what we've seen that Mikel Arteta doesn't really share my view on that. And, no matter what Emil does, he comes in for the game against Luton, delivers a man of the match performance, but then he doesn't play after that pretty much at all between there and the end of the season. Just a couple of substitute appearances, including one on the final day. So if that is the case, then it doesn't help Emil Smith-Rowe and it doesn't help Arsenal, because we know that you need a stronger squad that you absolutely trust. And it's been pretty apparent throughout this season that Arteta doesn't really trust a lot of his fringe players, even players like Eddie, who he did use an awful lot initially, just fell far from down the pecking order as the season progressed, and he just didn't really trust him. Basically from the Fulham game onwards, then Eddie was out of the picture. Really, Kai Havertz moved as a striker. You had Leandro Trossard playing as a striker when Jesus wasn't there as well, and Eddie was, reduced to bits and pieces from the substitutes bench. So you need to improve that, and that's where Arsenal are going to improve. If they're going to take the next step next season and actually get beyond this Manchester City team, then I think improving the squad is absolutely essential to that. So players like Eddie, Reece, Emil, who should be players that you really, really trust to play plenty of minutes, those players, if you're not in that position where you do trust them, then you've got to move them on. And you've got to replace those players with players that you do trust, whether that be players who are now in the first team and you bring in players who are going to go straight into the first team, and suddenly, rather than Eddie on the bench, you've got Gabriel Jesus on the bench, or rather than Emil on the bench, you've got no, there is no position there for Emil. They need to replace Emil and bring in someone that they like, because Fabio Vieira maybe falls into the same category, because even though when he's come back from fitness, we didn't really see him get used at all by Mikel Arteta following his return from injury. And Reece Nelson as well falls into the same category of, you desperately need someone that you can ease a burden on Bukayo Saka in terms of how much he plays. And if you don't trust Reece to be able to deliver that, then you've got to move Reece on and you've got to bring in someone that you can, because you can't keep playing Bukayo as much as he's been playing. It just doesn't feel humanly possible for him to continue without breaking down or without him being able to maintain his top level. So I think it's going to be really, really important. What sort of transfer fees can Arsenal get? Now, we know Aaron Ramsdale's been linked with Newcastle pretty heavily in recent weeks. 15 million. We all had our say on that. I said I think Arsenal might struggle to get maybe the transfer fee that we're all hoping for because of Ramsdale's situation, and because anyone who comes in for negotiations are going to be saying to Arsenal, look, you're not going to play him. He's second choice. So why should we bid what you want for? But I do agree, like so many of you said, 15 million just sounds like a nonsense to me. That shouldn't even be entertained. You may as well just keep him if someone's only offering 15 million. For a player of Rambo's quality, for his length of contract, he's English, he's homegrown, he's improved massively. They signed him for 30 million, nearly 30 million 2 years ago, and he's become a better goalkeeper since then. And he's got a long-term contract. So that should be the sort of money you're demanding, especially if you're talking to a club like Newcastle when it comes to Ramsdale. How much can you get combined for Eddie, Reece, and Emil if you get rid of those players? You're looking at 60 million maybe for the three of them. I don't know, but it's all important money, and that's just going to help strengthen the squad. Because if you sell those players, that is big numbers. If you're moving on 4 key players there, or key players, but if you're moving on 4 important players there, or relatively senior players there, they have to be replaced, because you can't not replace them, because the squad needs to stay as strong as it possibly can. And so that money is going to need to be spent elsewhere, bringing in players you do trust. So I'm really keen to get your thoughts on it. Now, who do you think should go? Obviously, I've listed players like Eddie and Emil. Do you feel that they need to go this summer? Is this the summer they need to be sold? I'd be surprised if any of you disagree. It just feels right for them more than anything, as well as Arsenal. I'm talking about how important it is for Arsenal to bring in cash for these players, but for Emil especially, and for Eddie, they need to go out. It just feels like the time is right for these players now to go on, move on from Arsenal, go and play for a club where the manager really does want to give them game time and kick on in their careers, because they're just, it feels like a couple of wasted seasons, certainly for Emil anyway. The last couple of seasons, and they need to move on. So let me know your thoughts on it. Who should Edu be selling? How much do you think Arsenal could potentially generate for some player sales? We haven't even talked about the likes of Sambi Lokonga, who had a good loan spell at Luton. Will he be moving on this summer, or will he come back to the first team squad? Nuno Tavares, another player who we know has now come back from Nottingham Forest and won't be making that move. There's plenty of other players. Kieran Tierney, for example. It's going to be a really, really busy summer for Edu. All the talk is about incomings, understandably so, but making sales and getting good deals for a lot of these players is going to be so, so important. So let me know your thoughts below on who Arsenal should sell, how much money they should be targeting for some of these players. Love to get your views, as always, on that. Okay, moving on. I didn't even mention Oleksandr Zinchenko there and potential players who could be sold. I wouldn't be at all surprised if a decent offer came in for Zinchenko this summer, that it is something that Arsenal would consider. Like him and some other senior players, like I put Thomas Partey in that category. If a decent bid comes in for them, I'm sure Arsenal will consider it. They're not going to actively look to get them out of the club, because they're still important players. And Zinchenko, yes, he had a disappointing season individually at times, but he's still an important player for Arsenal. He put out this message on social media yesterday where he accepted he hasn't been at his best. He said, proud of the team and happy to be one of you Gunners. The club season is over now, and unfortunately we didn't get what we wanted, but I'm sure this club is on the right way to achieve everything. Personally, I completely understand that it wasn't my best season so far, and I promised, first of all, to the fans and the doubters that I'll be back much stronger. Thank you so much for your massive support, and see you very soon. And look, you can't argue he didn't have the best of seasons, Zinchenko, but he's still a very, very good footballer. And I still think he can bring a lot to this Arsenal team and to this squad anyway. But having said that, if someone came in for Zinchenko, given I hate calling a player a new signing when they're not a new signing, but Jurrien Timber genuinely is going to feel like a new signing last season, isn't he? Because Arsenal spent that money and we just haven't seen him because of the injury, but we're going to see him next season. He's in a position that Zinchenko can operate in, providing Timber can show during the summer and pre-season that he's fully recovered and ready to go. Then, if someone, for example, a Bayern Munich or someone like that who has been linked with Zinchenko, put some money on the table for him, I'm sure Arsenal would probably have to consider it, just like they would if someone came in for a Thomas Partey, for example. But I thought those were quite good words from Zinchenko after what has been a pretty difficult season for him. Okay, moving on to international matters now. I mentioned the Euros at the start of this show. Declan Rice, Aaron Ramsdale, and Bukayo Saka all listed in England's sort of pre-Euro 2024 training camps. I think it's 30 players, including that, including this. It's going to be whittled down to it's 26, isn't it? I think it's now been agreed that the squads can be for the Euros. I mean, Ramsdale, Saka, and Declan Rice, barring any injuries between now and then, will certainly be in that final list. For them, some interesting names in there from an England point of view. Adam Wharton, Crystal Palace, what a fantastic signing he has been since coming from Blackburn in January. No Jordan Henderson, which I'm happy about. I think that he just wouldn't have deserved to be in the squad. I was surprised though, I have to admit. I thought Southgate would probably still take him, but he's not. So that's potentially a bit of a surprise as well. No Marcus Rashford after what was a really disappointing season for him as well. But the England boys from Arsenal all included in there. No Ben White. Gareth Southgate said in his press conference yesterday he didn't even speak to Ben White. That's no great surprise. I think it made it pretty clear in the last squad announcement what was going on there between England and Ben White. So there was never really any chance of him being in. But it's certainly a shame from an England point of view anyway, because Ben White is absolutely one of the best defenders in this country. And he should be playing there. But I know a lot of people are quick to blame Ben White for that, but I think England and their coaching staff need to look a little bit closer at themselves for why Ben White is not included. Okay, moving on quickly from Arsenal, I just had to touch on it. I mean, nothing really surprises me anymore when it comes to Chelsea, but I have to admit, I did, I was a bit taken aback when I was on my computer yesterday in the evening. I suddenly saw the news broken by Matt Law at the Telegraph that Pochettino had gone. It's just a crazy club, I have to say. I mean, some of their fans, I think, probably might think it was a good decision from the club, but from looking from the outside in, like we do when it comes to clubs like Chelsea, you just look at the progress really that they've made. Certainly from September onwards, I think they amassed the fourth most top points in the Premier League from late September onwards, behind only Arsenal, Man City, and Liverpool. They'd had a really young squad that was thrown together that Pochettino had to try and manage. He clearly was getting some sort of tune out of them towards the end of the season. Yes, there were some bad results like the one at Arsenal when they got absolutely hammered 5-0. But on the whole, their performances were improving. Their results were improving. And now they've got to start all over again. I mean, from an Arsenal point of view, you think it's probably a good thing because there's going to be more uncertainty and more sort of movement in the squad, and some players will be unhappy. It sounds like the players are unhappy that Pochettino's gone. But yeah, I look at Arsenal now and the stability that Arsenal have got and how that club is run. And then I look at things like Chelsea at the moment, and I'm so thankful for how smoothly things are operating at Arsenal right now. And long may that continue, because if you've got a stable club where everyone's pulling in the right direction and everyone has a clear plan, then results are just always going to be far much better than if you've got an unstable, uncertain atmosphere around the club. We've seen at Arsenal, when they've been in that sort of environment, how difficult it can be to produce on the pitch. And it's no surprise that Chelsea have been a mess the last couple of years, given the state of how that club appears to be run anyway at the moment. So yeah, really surprised at that. But what do you think? Are you happy that Pochettino's gone? Do you think that's a good thing for Arsenal ahead of the new season? Do you think Chelsea are going to be inconsistent again under whoever comes in to replace him? Let me know in the comments below. Just quickly on the women's side, good news. Stina Blackstenius has signed her new contract, Arsenal's top goal scorer for the last couple of seasons. 18 goals, I think it was last season and the season before as well. Really good news that she has signed her new contract. Arsenal were always confident that was going to get done, and it was announced yesterday. So congratulations to Stina, and hopefully the start of some really good news coming out of Arsenal women between now and the new season, because I think they will be very active when it comes to strengthening their squad. They have to be. Obviously, we've seen Viv is going, and she's going to need to be replaced. It would be a real disappointment if Stina had gone at the same summer that Viv had gone. But Stina staying, and I'm sure they'll make some really strong additions and they'll be ready to go for the start of the next season. Some questions and comments now. Here's one from Matt. He said, a question, Charles. Any risk in your eyes that Pep and Arteta both have contracts expiring in 2025? Any chance that Mikel could be tempted back to City if Pep leaves? It's hard for me to answer that because obviously I'm not Mikel Arteta. But all I can say is, from my point of view, everything that I've heard from an Arsenal side, from Mikel, it's a very happy marriage at Arsenal right now between everyone. And yes, he's only got a year left on his contract, and it does expire the same time that Pep's expires at Manchester City. And Pep admitted after their title win at the weekend that he is now closer to leaving than he is to staying. But I think Mikel Arteta extends his stay at Arsenal. I'd be very, very surprised if Arsenal start next season without Mikel Arteta having signed a contract extension at the club. He's going to go away. Well, in fact, he's probably away right now, as he always does at the end of the season. He'll take a couple of weeks in Spain with his family. He knows to go and meet up and stay with his sister, with his family, and he will recharge the batteries. He'll still be on the phone because he just always is. But then he'll come back. He'll sit down with the club, and I am sure that a contract will be agreed. It's just a matter of time. Arsenal want to stay, want him to stay. Mikel wants to stay. He knows the job is not done, and he wants to achieve big, big things at Arsenal. So I cannot see that he will walk away and go to Manchester City. I would be very, very surprised. I think when Mikel does leave Arsenal, he'll go abroad, probably back to Spain. But I don't think that's going to be for a while yet, I have to say. So that's my views on it. But obviously, look, you never know in football. But I'd be stunned if that was to happen. John says this will shock many. However, I would be really keen to sign Jackson from Chelsea. He could easily develop into a top class centre forward. Whatever it is, this guy has it, and it just needs nurturing. I thought this was a really interesting one from John. First of all, no, I wouldn't be signing Nicholas Jackson from Arsenal. I just don't think that's from Chelsea. That's just not the type of striker Arsenal need right now. But having said that, I agree with you, John. I think Nicholas Jackson has got it. And I think he could be a really top centre forward. He's been the butt of a lot of jokes this season. And I'm not surprised because he is so, so raw. And I look back, I always go back to that game against Tottenham when I think he scored 3 or 4 in that game, but he could have easily, if he had his head switched on, was more sensible, could have walked away about 9 goals in that game. But even at the start of last summer, when I watched him in pre-season for Chelsea, I just immediately looked at him and he caught my eye. And I just thought he's a really interesting striker. He's got everything. He's got pace. You look at what he did to Saliba in that 5-0. I've not really seen a player run away from Saliba like Jackson did in that game. But obviously he missed chances in that game as well. And that's the problem with him. But I think as a project type player, someone could turn Nicholas Jackson into a really, really top striker. I don't think that should be Arsenal right now because I just don't think they need that type of player. But I agree that there is something that I see in Nicholas Jackson that makes me think he could be a really, really top striker, I have to say. But no, I don't really think he should be someone that Arsenal are targeting for the moment. And one player they are looking at, obviously, Benjamin Sesko. We talked about him yesterday. Not the only player. There's other strikers as well. Victor Gyökeres, for example, at Sporting Lisbon is certainly a player that's also on the agenda. But here's one from, looks like, it's that Tika. I can't pronounce that. Tiki de Lung. That's probably a very bad attempt at it, but you're saying you're not feeling the Sesko transfer. We need a player with a different profile than Havertz. See, I don't really agree that you need a player with a different profile from Havertz because I think Arsenal already have that in Gabriel Jesus and Leandro Trossard, And Gabriel Jesus is still a top quality forward. And I'm sure if he can have this summer and get himself back fully fit and ready to go for the start of next season, even if that means going under the knife and having an operation on this knee, if it works and he's back fully fit and ready, he is a top striker who can do big, big things for Arsenal next season. So I don't think they need a different sort of profile to Havertz because I think they have that in Trossard and in who can play there, but certainly in Gabriel Jesus. So I think another player in the similar mold to Havertz is actually what Arsenal need, and that could be Sesko. But that is just my opinion on that. Let me know if you agree or disagree, as always, in the comments below. All right, that's it from me, everyone. Thank you very much for your time, as always. Really do appreciate it. I'll be back tomorrow to do it all over again. Got Inside Arsenal Extra Time tomorrow as well with James Benge, where the plan is, I think we're going to go through our sort of end of season awards, giving our awards out, Arsenal awards out for various topics throughout the season. So keep your eyes peeled for that as well. Until then, everyone, have a great Wednesday. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.